Mark chapter 9, and we'll be there in a second. We're starting a brand new series titled Processing. It's going to make a little bit more sense here in a second. And it's based off of this idea. I think as a teenager, I know I felt this way more often than not, really. But it's very easy as a teenager to feel stuck. You're stuck at home because ain't none of y'all driving, legally anyway. I don't know what you do, when you find some keys. But you're stuck at home. Maybe some friends are making plans, but you go to ask your parents, hey, can I go? And your parents say no, so now you're stuck at home while your friends are having fun. But let's get even more practical and even more kind of down into it. You're also stuck because what happens when you feel stuck is the only way you know you're stuck is you begin to look around. And you play the comparison game, and every time you play the comparison game, you lose, right? So you begin comparing yourself and how, he looks taller than I am. He's probably going to make the basketball team. I'm not. Her eyebrows look better than my eyebrows, so she's probably going to get more likes on her picture than I am, right? I've seen how well they draw, and I'm trying to draw, but they draw much better than I draw. So they're a better artist than I am. And we start playing this comparison game, and we feel stuck because everyone is progressing faster and further than we are. Physically, mentally, sexually, socially, they seem to be just developing far more than we are. I remember when I was in high school, there was this older couple. It was straight out of a movie. He was the quarterback of the football team. He had better facial hair then than I even do now, and I'm far removed from high school. This dude was the guy. And even his girlfriend looked like she was probably 20-something, and she wasn't because she was in the high school too. It's just man, her hair falls perfectly every time. Ladies, you know what I'm saying? Don't you hate those girls? Every time they just wake up and it's straight, right? It's just aggravating, and you look around and you feel stuck while everyone else around you is progressing some way. So tonight's message, here's the bottom line. You are not stuck. You're processing. You're not stuck. You're simply going through a process. You are not the final product of who you're going to be. And you shouldn't be the final product. Have you ever eaten some food that wasn't quite done yet? You can get sick from that, okay? So you're not the final version of you. You're processing. In fact, if you don't believe me, this isn't even biblical. We'll pick up the Bible in a second. If you are between the ages of 10 and 21, you're in this process that everyone in the world calls adolescence. It's actually stages of life where you're processing. Adolescence is where you're growing and developing mentally, sexually, socially, physically. You're going through this process. So I wanted to remind you tonight, you are not the final version of you. But here's what we tend to do. When I look around and I realize that I'm not progressing like other people are progressing, I get frustrated. And all of a sudden, I want to quit my process. And I'm looking for an escape. And here's what an escape looks like. If I want to escape my process, I don't like the way my life's going compared to their life. So I'm going to take some sort of substance to forget about it for a second. I'm going to check out. I'm going to do some things I can't feel anything emotionally. I'm not developed like they are. So I'm going to physically cut myself so I can feel something and I can escape this moment I'm in, even if it's temporarily. You may shut off healthy relationships, like with family, like with your parents, and you'll embrace unhealthy relationships to escape where you feel like you're not progressing because you feel stuck. So here's my warning label. If we were out and you're driving this metaphorical car in life, this is the warning light on your car saying, stop, something bad's happening if that's the track you're going down. Because you want to escape with a substance or a bad relationship, and here's why you shouldn't escape. If you try to escape your process, number one, you will keep being stuck in your process. The moment you try to escape your process, you will stay stuck in your process. Here's what it looks like. You've seen the movies where they grow up out of school, out of high school, out of college even. They become adults, and then they have to go back to their hometown. Have you seen a movie similar to this? Usually around Christmas time, they're all over the place, right? Brought to you by Hallmark. But they come back home, And there's that dude that is still acting like it's high school, and he's living on the memories of what was going on in high school. And this person has gone through their process, and now they come back, and this guy is still stuck in his process. When you try to escape using whatever substance you want to try to abuse to escape it for a moment, you stop developing and you stay stuck. And now all you have to go on is your memories, and you have no future to really look forward to. So the moment you try to escape, you stop developing. The other reason why you don't want to escape your process is this. Trying to escape your process, you miss the development if you escape too quickly, okay? So with all that in mind, I want to look at a passage of Scripture. We're going to look at 3 verses on why your process is important. And it's actually going to be some of the same verses we're going to look at next week. So I'm doing this so that way, next week when you talk about this with your parents and we read some of the same verses, you're going to sound really smart. They're going to be so proud of you that you read your Bible that you will get to go hang out with your friends, right? So you're welcome. You're welcome. It pays to come to Squad, all right? So Mark chapter 9 is where we're going to be at, and let me set this up. Jesus comes in on an argument. How many people have ever walked in on an argument? Between mom and dad. I'm just kidding. That's not what this is about. That's not what this is about. But you walk in on an argument. Don't you feel awkward? Yeah. Now imagine you walk in on the argument, and you're very close to one side of the argument. Maybe that was you walk in on the argument, and you already know that, hey, that's my best friend. That's my ride or die. All right? It's you and me. So whatever the problem is, we're going to handle this. I'm with you, right? But then you get the details of the argument, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, hold up. No. We ain't like that. I didn't understand. That's what's going on here. So all of a sudden you're like kind of drifting back, like, who is you? Like, we've been friends for a while, but we don't roll like that, right? So Jesus walks in on this argument between his disciples, his ride or dies, and this father. And it's all about this boy, the son of this father, who has epileptic seizures, and it's brought on by demon possession. Now, real quick, this is not saying that everyone who has seizures is demon possessed. That is not what's going on, okay? So we don't have time to jump into all that. We'll talk a little bit more about it next week, so come on back. But that's not what this is about. What it's about is that this father brought his son to Jesus' disciples for healing, and they couldn't do it. Because sometimes you and I bring our problems to the wrong people, and then we expect them to solve it. So for some reason, me and whoever you're like, if it's you, like whoever you're dating, y'all have some problems, and instead of going to your parents, who can really give some great relationship advice, you go to your best friend who's going to tell you whatever you want to hear anyway because they want you to like them, because they're going through their social process right now. So whatever they can say to get you to like them and hang out with them, that's what they're going to go with. So you have to be careful about what problems you bring to who, because that's setting you up for failure. But let's keep going. So we're going to jump into the conversation. They're arguing back and forth, and then Jesus comes in and says, what's going on here? And the son, whenever he sees Jesus, the spirit in him throws him into another convulsion. And the issue with this is that when he would seize, sometimes this spirit would throw him into water to drown him or fire to burn him. That's why this type of epileptic seizure is different than others, and that's why I'm saying that doesn't mean you're demon-possessed, but this kid was, because they would try to take him out. So now this kid falls out, he's having a seizure, and Jesus does the weirdest thing. Think about, like, if someone right now is having a seizure, thankfully we have some medical professionals in the room, but don't go anywhere, Mark. But if that were to happen, you know what we would do? We would go to the student to help them. But your boy Jesus, the kid falls out, and Jesus turns to the dad. That's weird. And if you want to find out how that's weird and why that happened, don't miss next Wednesday. But let's go through for tonight. All right, here we go. All right, verse 21. Here's the conversation. He doesn't die. Spoiler alert. But verse 21, Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? And the father answers, from childhood. I got a problem, like real quick. You know, how is it that this kid has been struggling with this since childhood, and he's still going through the same thing? I feel like you would have done something a little bit quicker, a little bit sooner to address the problem, Dad. Like, what's up with that? But he's been going through this for so long. So here's my question to you, squad. I think it's, well, let me just make a statement, not a question. We'll answer questions later. But it's possible to go through something for so long that it actually becomes normal. You can have bouts of anxiety for so long that now it's just my anxiety. My anxiety's acting up. You've even labeled it and called it. You can go through a feeling for so long that it just becomes normal. You can have a mood with you for so long that it just becomes normal. And it can be a bad relationship that you've been in for so long that now, because of how he talked about you, now your self-image and your negative self-image is just normal. So I think we can have something for so long. It could also be something positive. Like, think about this. It could be constant compliments that you used to get. And now you haven't gotten them in quite a while, so now you're thinking, what's wrong with me? You could have something for so long that it just becomes normal. This kid, and I shouldn't really call him a kid, he was a little older, but this child, this father had this for so long since childhood, and it would go through these episodes, and now the father's bringing him to Jesus. So let's pick up right there, verse 22. Here's the father goes on. It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him, but if you can do anything, he's talking to Jesus now, if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. And then Jesus pulls out like his braggadocious card. Jesus all of a sudden takes a little bit of offense to how the father was approaching him. Now, again, mind you, the son's still falling out on the ground, foaming at the mouth, doing all sorts of stuff. And they're having this conversation. And the father says, if you can do anything. And Jesus responds back the same way. If you can, who do you think you're talking to? Have you not seen my tour? I'm selling T-shirts, swapping up for a blessing. If I can, right? So Jesus responds in verse 23, if I can, everything is possible for one who believes. Here's what that means. It puts indictment on the father saying that it's possible if you believe. So the thing that you're going through, like last week we talked about storms, it's not about that process. It's not simply about, oh, Jesus isn't helping me out. Jesus must not be able. That's not it. This isn't about Jesus' inability. It's about our inability. Your faith initiates the process. Your faith is going to determine your progress in your process. So in verse 23, being stuck reflects our inability, not Jesus. Because what we're about to find out is every person in this passage is stuck. And now let's look at the father. So the father reveals his in the next verse, verse 24. Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. I do believe. I believe enough to bring him to you. But the very next phrase, help me overcome my unbelief. Jesus, I believe you, but help me overcome my unbelief. I believe him enough to bring him here to you, but I just don't believe enough that you're going to be able to do anything about it. Why? Because it's been going on for so long, it's just become normal. I just brought him here on a whim because I heard some things about you. So I believe, but I just don't believe you enough that anything's going to change after tonight. I believe you enough to come to squad. I believe you enough to sing along to the lyrics. I believe you enough to even play worship music when I'm having a bad day. But Jesus, I don't really believe you enough that I'm going to leave squad any different. I don't believe you enough to actually talk to my friends about how much you love them whenever they're having a bad day. I just love you enough to caption my picture and put it on Instagram to say squad life. I don't believe you enough to not post a negative comment on someone else's picture. And now this father's stuck. Just like every other area of our lives, physically, socially, we can feel stuck. You can also feel stuck in your faith. Where I believe it, but if I'm honest, I feel stuck, just like this dad. And Jesus gave the response. He said, if you feel stuck, here's the answer. It's on you. Believe. That's all you have to do. So the father is stuck in his faith. There's this tension that's going on with this dad. And I just wanted to remind you, wherever your tension is, you may feel stuck because of who you're bringing your issue to. You may feel stuck in a bad relationship or making poor choices because of who you're bringing your issues to. So choose your advice givers wisely. But now I want to talk about a little bit of a transition. Is that okay? So somebody say process. What does the process give? Because last week we kind of talked about how as you get older, you start asking different questions like, okay, when you were like 7 and 10 years old. And now you're asking why. So Josh, why does my process matter? Let me give you a little inside scoop. Does anyone follow us on Instagram? Instagram? Yeah, awesome. Those are the cool ones, all right? So if your hand's not up, look at the cool one. I'm just kidding. We're all cool. Just don't be weird. Well, number one, don't be weird, and that means you don't care for people. But today I was asked, like, hey, why don't you do a day in the life kind of situation? So on our stories for Instagram, you got to see a little bit of what I did today. And it begins with at about 6 o'clock, sometimes a little later, in the morning, a workout. All right, so I want to get moving. I want to start getting the blood flowing. And that way tonight I crash so hard, right? But I want to go ahead and get active because to me fitness helps and it helps my mind. I'm a much better person with my attitude when I get to work out. I don't know what it does, but I enjoy working out, okay? Well, I enjoy getting done working out, I should say that. But there's a part of working out that I did not like for the longest time, and it involves this. A resistance band. That's absolutely right. This is a light resistance band, and this part is one of the first things I do when I work out. All right, I write the workout on the board, and then I start pulling on this thing to get warmed up, because when you get old, this is important. But for the longest time, I didn't worry about this part. So one of the things I'll do, I'll pull it apart, but I can't do that right now because I have a microphone, but I'll do some of these, especially if I'm going to lift anything over my head, and I also want to get my wrist warmed up as well, so I'll do some of that. And I'll wrap it around something, I'll pull at it to really get those areas of my body firing. My hamstrings, though, and that's kind of the point of this message, or this illustration, is my hamstrings don't fire. My glutes don't fire. If you're like into sports and stuff, the back of my legs. So after high school and college, my knees started hurting crazy. Like I had a hurt knee. I thought something was torn. To be honest with you, I thought it was because of my dancing that I would do sometimes when I was in college. We'll talk more about that when you're older, dear, right? But I thought it had something to do with teaching me how to Dougie, another time, another place. But my knee was so sore. And now as I've been working out and watching these various videos, shout out to all the tutorial makers, I realized that the reason my knee was sore, it wasn't an issue with my knee. It was the lack of process I was going through around my knee. So my ankles were tight, my hips were tight, and I wasn't warming up the back of my legs to do whatever the movement was. So for the longest time, I neglected that process, and I hurt myself, and I was unable to do certain things. So this morning I was getting warmed up, getting loose, and I realized the importance of this resistance band. This was like the lightest thing I would pick up, but it's one of the most important things that I would need to do. Because the process that you go through is going to determine how far you can go when that process is over. What you do as an adolescent will determine how you are as an adult, what relationships you are and how you are in a relationship. So I want to look at one final process, and then we're going to bring this thing to a close and tie this whole resistance band message up. But check this out. After the boy gets healed, spoiler alert, the disciples go to Jesus in private, because when you're going to have an embarrassing conversation, you don't want an audience, okay? So they go to him in private, and they say, Jesus, essentially it's like, we've been with you for a long time. We've been with you about 3 years now. We're coming near the end of your ministry. They didn't know that at the time, but Jesus would go on to tell them. We've seen you do things. We've heard you teach. We know all the right things to say. we know all the right things to do. And their question was, why couldn't we call that spirit out of that boy? Why couldn't we do it? And Jesus looks him in the eye and gives him one sentence response, and it's in verse 29. Jesus replied this way. He said, this kind of spirit that was in this young man, this kind can come out only by prayer. Only by prayer. This is not an indictment against the disciples to say, you don't know what it means to pray. They didn't need a vocabulary lesson. They knew the definition of prayer. They also didn't need a practical teaching on how to pray because they'd already been through that. So they knew what prayer was. They knew how to pray. The only difference is there's a gap between knowing what, knowing how, and actually doing it. And that gap is discovered in the process. Because going through the process instills discipline. The difference between me working out in my garage now is I am not going to cut out using the resistance band to get warm up. I knew what a resistance band was when I didn't use it, but now I won't neglect this part because I've been through the process and the pain of knowing what it's like not to have it. The disciples did not need to be taught anything about prayer. They just had not been through the process of realizing how important this needed to become in their lives, and it needed to be a discipline. The reason you're going to get stuck in your faith is because we neglect some of the disciplines that God has for us. Josh, I have bouts with anxiety. Well, do you know how many Bible verses there are about anxiety? Have you ever read them when you felt anxious? Well, I don't know where they are. Google is your friend. The Bible talks about anxiety. The Bible talks about depression. The Bible talks about relationships. The fruit of the Spirit is all these positive things that maybe you feel like you're stuck and can't get access to. But when you employ these disciplines, you get unstuck. But the only way you realize you need those disciplines is by going through the process. Don't you know that the disciples never forgot to pray after this? Have you ever made a mistake so bad? Like you read the directions, but you didn't follow them in the right order, and then you forgot something, and you messed up some stuff. Like you burnt down like all the macaroni, almost lost the microwave in the process. Like you just burnt up the kitchen, right? You've made that mistake, and you won't ever make that mistake again. So squad, here's my question to you. What have you left out of the process? You feel stuck with bad advice about relationships. You feel stuck that people are like better than you, more than you. Here, let me make it practical for you. And here, write this part down. Here's another bottom line. Stop shopping for results. Stop shopping for results. Start shopping for processes. Here's what I mean. Let's talk about Drake real quick. Everybody wants Drake money, Drake fame, Drake lyrics, but no one wants to go through the Drake process. You got to go through Degrassi before you get to the Drake lyrics. You got to be on the old school TV show before you become Drake as we know Drake today. Let me make it more practical for the ladies in the room. Check this one out. You look at her makeup, and I'm not trying to advocate for all that kind of stuff, and make sure you listen to your parents, and we'll talk about self-image more in depth in another series. But you look at other girls, and their makeup is just like padow, like it just looked like it's perfect, right? Every time they just walk into the classroom, it's like how and why can't I? And you look at them, and you want the results of her eyebrows, but you're not willing to go through the tutorial videos on YouTube to understand the shadow that was applied and all that. My point is this: you can't just want the result without going through the process. With fitness, it's real easy. I was going to show you a picture of a guy that I admire. He's the guy, fitness-wise. He looks like he works out, like he's got the chest and the arms and the lats and the traps. But he also has his shirt off in this picture. So I won't show him, right, for that reason. But you understand that I don't want to be seen next to that guy right now. But I don't have the same disciplines in my life that he has in his. So I can't just sit back and say, I want the process. Like, I want that. I want that physique. I want to be able to bench or lift that much weight and not put in the work to get there. We have the same 24-hour span to go through our process every day. But his disciplines are different than mine. There are things that I'll value and undervalue compared to him. I'm not going to work out if my son and my wife are awake. Now, sometimes when I do work out, I wake them up. That's a different story. But I'm not going to take the time away from my family to do that. On the other hand, it's part of his job to work out. So he's going to do that. His disciplines are different than mine. But I wanted to tell you tonight, stop shopping for results. Stop comparing yourself to other people's results when you haven't been through their process. And stop thinking that it came easy for them. So many people say, oh, well, it's easy for them. Like, I'm trying to lose weight, but they're already in shape. You didn't go through their process. So let's not do that. Let's not compare ourselves, especially to results. So here's the last thing, and then we're going to close in prayer. And I want you to remember this line right here. You have to love the process more than you desire the results. With anything you want to do, with whatever goal you have, there's a process to it. And you have to love going through the process and grinding every day more than you desire the results. And the same's true with your faith. You're going to have tough days and rough days, but guess what? Those rough days are part of the process, because now you understand the value. This father's son got healed after a bout of tough and difficult processes. You must know that he tried other things. He tried doctors and it didn't work. He took him to other professionals and it didn't work. But then when he brought him to the right person, he got him in front of Jesus, all of a sudden, that father's faith was never the same after that. That boy's faith was never the same after that. And those disciples, their faith was never the same after that. They never forgot to pray. So squad, your faith disciplines. Are you praying? Are you reading? Take that time to do it because it matters. So with that, I want to pray with you, and then we can go to small group.